Well, everybody, I did not find Bigfoot.
Aw, failure.
As I noted. One of these days, I'm going to have Rich and George on the show. We'll all tell stories from the trip, but I'll just hit the high points here. First thing I would like to say is that I believe it was Canada suggested, I believe his exact words were, "It's all a work, son." I guess he thought they were going to take us into the woods. Somebody was going to go out there in a Bigfoot suit, run around like an idiot, and we're all going to come home and say we saw Bigfoot. I am sorry to disappoint, especially those of you that watch Finding Bigfoot. Somebody there noted that the television show Finding Bigfoot, which, by the way, is apparently the second most popular show in the history of Animal Planet, behind Whale Wars. He noted that as a Bigfoot hunter, sometimes he would go into the woods and he would sit there for like 18 hours and see nothing. And he said that would make a bad television show. He goes, everybody remember, it's a television show. It is a television show that is designed to entertain. In other words, if you're watching Finding Bigfoot and you're expecting that to be the behavior of people in the BFRO, you will be sadly let down if you ever go out on an expedition with the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. I think there were about 45 people on this expedition. We went up into the Cascades. I'll put some pictures on Facebook. It was the most awesome view of Mount Adams you've ever seen in your life.
I believe that.
The campsite was so awesome. Of the 45 people there, I would say that, without mentioning any names, just in case anyone from the BFRO is listening. And granted, these people are not all BFRO members. I don't know who was a member, who was there on, whose wife had paid for their trip like Whitney did for me for my birthday, or whatever the case might be. But of all of the people there, I concluded that 3 of them, of the 45 or so, were absolutely completely out of their minds. 3. Of the other 43, about half of them believed, for whatever reason, maybe they'd seen something, or maybe they'd read a lot of stuff and drawn their own conclusions, but a half of them believed in Bigfoot, to the degree that they spoke of Bigfoot the way that I speak of my cats. Bigfoot just exists. And it does this, and it does this. That's it. It's a fact. It just exists. They spoke of it like I speak of bacon, which I have every morning, or whatever. The other half were very, very solid skeptics, including the guy that pretty much led the entire thing. We took a couple of night walks, which is where, for example, they would drive us 3 miles into the woods on these tiny little dirt roads. And they would drop us off, and we would turn out all of our lights. We all had to bring a headlamp with a red light on it, no white light. Had to be a red light. And but we would turn off the lights, and we would walk back in absolute complete darkness. And they'd do some howls like you see on the show and listen. And they had some audio that they would play. Like, they had audio of a whale that they were playing, whale calls. Because apparently some researcher had played some whale calls, and he'd gotten a response, he said, from Sasquatch. So that was one of their things they're experimenting with. But anyway, we'd go back on this night walk, and there were people that were certain that they heard footsteps in the woods next to us, like we were being followed. And every now and then somebody would bring this up, and the guy in charge would be like, "Oh, all right," and he'd keep walking. Like, either A, he did not believe these people, or B, he would respond that you're probably hearing the echo of your own footsteps on the embankment there. People would hear weird noises, and instead of saying, for example, Like, sometimes you watch the show and it's like they hear a sound and, like, it must be Squatch! Our leader was like, probably an elk. Probably this, probably that. Looking for logical explanations for these sounds. These people were not out there attempting to explain that everything we heard must be a Squatch. One of the best things about the trip is I learned so much about the woods and the real-life animals in the woods.
Oh, good.
There was, I woke up in the middle of the night once, and there was a ridge above us. And I heard a noise that was like a growl. And it was quite horrifying, actually. But what it was a nighthawk, which is a bird. I believe this is I may have the bird wrong. I'm not a bird expert, but I believe it was a nighthawk. This bird flies around, and to attract the ladies, this bird will swoop towards the ground and unfurl its wings, and in doing so, it makes the sound which sounds like a growl. So if you knew nothing about the nighthawk, you'd be peeing your sleeping bag in fear in your tent. But I heard it all night, and it's like, yeah, that's a nighthawk. That is a bird impressing other birds. It is not a cougar. We heard some howls in the night, and of course there were people that thought, my God, it's the Squatch. But base camp the next morning, the fella in charge is like, yep, that's coyote. Which is disturbing, I'm sure, to some people that they didn't actually hear a Squatch. But the first night, we were going to go on the night walk, there were probably 12 people going, so we needed 2 cars. And we were all going to leave at 10 o'clock. The idea was they'd drive us out 3 miles, and they'd drop us off, and we'd walk back in the dark. And it's a very dark night, overcast, and in the distance you see these flashes of lightning. Every now and then, every 5 minutes or so, you'd see a little flash. So they pile us into the cars, and off we go down this dirt road 3 miles. Downhill, by the way, so we had to walk uphill 3 miles.
Bullshit.
So they drive us out there, and they drop us off, and the car leaves. Drives off back to camp. So we get out, and the guy starts explaining all this stuff, use your red light, don't use the white light, we're going to do some howls, make sure you're quiet when we do so. Their theory is that Squatch, if it exists, is a woodland creature. It lives in the woods, obviously. We are humans. We don't live in the woods. So therefore, the idea that you're going to sneak up on a Squatch is preposterous. So they feel that what you should do is go out there in the woods and act like hikers. Don't act like a hunter. Don't pack heat. Don't wear orange. Don't do the things that hunters do. Go out there and act like a hiker. An innocent hiker hiking down a trail late at night, which granted is odd, but that's the idea. They feel that perhaps the Squatches will be curious as to your behavior, and they will go find you. So really, the show should not be Finding Bigfoot. It should be Bigfoot Finding Man.
Found by Bigfoot.
Yeah, found by Bigfoot. So we go out there, and they're explaining all this and everything like that, and I see the lightning in the distance. And I'm thinking, we've been standing here for 15 minutes, 3 mile walk back. Maybe we should get going here. So, keeps talking and talking. Play some howls, talking, not moving. And finally, we start getting a couple of raindrops. And then the guy is like, yep, we should probably start walking back. So we start walking, and 3 miles uphill is a long way. This is not a 10-minute jaunt.
No.
It is a long walk. So we're walking and...
In the woods at night?
In the woods at night.
Yeah, this is minimum 90 minutes.
Pitch darkness. Rain's starting to fall. And there's a little bit of lightning. There's a child there.
Oh.
His name is Hunter. He's 11. He's rather scared. Never gone on a night walk before. So this little fella, he's holding his mom's hand, and George, of course, he's always plugging the karate school. He can't help himself. So George is telling everybody, we're all martial artists. Don't worry, young fella.
Really?
Yeah, so he says.
You're gonna karate chop Bigfoot.
I guess so. He's trying to make the kid feel better, And as a joke, he points to Rich, who's 6'4", and he goes, "This man is a green belt in karate." And then he points to himself and he says, "I'm a black belt in karate." And then he points to him and he goes, "This little guy, he's the most dangerous of us all." So, of course, Hunter's like, "Can I hold your hand?" I'm like, "All right." So we start walking back down the yellow brick road. I got holding this kid's hand. He's holding his mom's hand in the other hand. And he's getting scared because not only is he in darkness, but now there's lightning in the distance. And I'm like, "Hunter, don't worry. You can see the lightning, but you can't hear the thunder. That means it's a long way away. We're fine." So we keep walking, and starts to rain a little harder and rain a little harder. And I pull out the poncho I had bought at Walmart, and I slip it over myself to protect me from the rain. It starts raining a little harder, and then I hear thunder following one of the lightning bolt flashes. And I'm like, seems like the lightning's getting a little closer. So now the rain is really coming down, and we're walking up this hill. It's slow going. Now it's wet, and the kid's mom gets on the walkie-talkie. And she's trying to radio back to camp. "Can you guys come pick us up? It's starting to rain. Thunder's starting to hear thunder. Lightning's getting a little closer. Come back and pick us up when you get a chance." Well, apparently 3 miles is out of walkie-talkie range. So nobody can hear us. I'm like, my God. So we keep walking and walking. And now they're like lightning flashes and then a couple of seconds and thunder. I'm like, Jesus Christ. So we keep walking. Now I'm just like, I'm in a poncho and I'm drenched. I'm just absolutely drenched, head to toe. And they're like people in the group that didn't bring ponchos. Some of them were in their jeans and T-shirts or sweatshirts, and they're absolutely head to toe soaking wet in this rain. And bam! There's another thunderclap. We keep walking. Now the mom's starting to get kind of desperate. We need to get a hold of camp. We need these people to come back and get us. This is getting bad out here. So she's on the walkie-talkie, and unbeknownst to her, she's actually talking. She thinks she got through to camp, but she's actually talking to a guy at the other end of the line, behind us. And he thinks he's talking to camp, and he's talking to her. And they're talking to each other, and nobody's getting through to camp. So now it's like, there are lightning flashes that, like, illuminate the entire trail. Like, bright as day when this lightning flashes. And a couple seconds, bam, there's a loud thunderclap. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this storm is, like, getting close to us here. So we're walking, and it's slow going, and no one can get back to camp. And then I swear to God on a stack of Bibles, there's a flash of lightning that is so bright that, like, the world turns white. I can't see the road. I can't see nothing. It's just like everything around me, like I died and I entered the light. That is how bright this was here. And a lightning bolt hits a tree, not even the house next door over there, Vinny, like maybe 20 feet away. Bam! And the guy at the front of the line, I swear to you, he fucking takes a bump. And I catch him, and we lift him back up. I thought, my God, did this guy have a heart attack? And he looks back, and he just goes, I just lost my balance. And we start smelling the woods. Not on fire. I'm not going to say, like, the forest was on fire or anything like that. But wherever this fucking lightning bolt hit starts burning. And we all smell smoke. It's 20 feet from us. And at that point, I'm like, dude, this storm is right over us. We're all drenched. We're out here in the open. either myself or somebody in this group is going to get hit by lightning. They're going to die. And no one can get back to camp. Nobody can get a hold of them. We're at least 2 miles away still. And I'm like, this is it. It's over. And the dude turns around and he goes, I just want everybody to know, I don't want anybody to be scared. But if you start feeling the hair on the back of your neck start to rise and you feel the static electricity building, you got 3 seconds to just drop down and spread yourself out because lightning's coming. And I'm like, it's over, dude. I'm done. Like, when I left this house and everybody's like, Brian's going to die in the woods, you know? Funny, you know? Yeah, Bigfoot's going to eat me. I'm going to get attacked by a bear. Whole thing's preposterous. But at that moment, I was sure that either I or somebody in our party was dead. Dead. Struck by lightning. And, you know, Rich is like trying to say, well, you know, the odds of being struck by lightning are very slim, and it's going to hit the tallest possible place and this and that. But
that's the wrong thing of the 6'4" guy to say, by the way.
Holy Jesus. So, amazingly, about 2 minutes later, like right out of some like platoon, actually, we look up at the top of the hill and there's a turn, and wham! The fucking truck zooms in out of nowhere, slams on the brakes, and the dude's like, get in the truck! And everybody starts running to the truck. And if you recall, it took 2 cars to get us out there. And I asked the dude, like, where's the other car? And he goes, the other car ain't coming. You all got to fit in here. And I realize I talk a lot on this show, but in real life, I'm kind of a quiet guy. That all changed. I'm like, everybody get in the fucking car! Little people up front! And I'm herding people into this car to get out of this fucking lightning storm. And we pack everybody in. And, like, Rich's legs are hanging out the tailgate because he can't quite fit in the back. And the dude zooms back on these trails and gets everybody back to camp. And, like, there were tents that were completely washed out. People left that night. Other people had to dry everything out. Our tent, amazingly, had not been soaked. But that right there, I remember getting back there, and, you know, if we have George and Rich on the show, they're going to downplay it. They're going to go, oh, yeah, we didn't. It was fine. Yeah, no, the chances of lightning hitting us were nothing. But that night in that tent, we are all sitting there, and it's just like, we could have died out there. I mean, we were directly under this crazy torrential downpour and lightning storm, walking out there right in the open, and there's like nothing anybody can do, you know? It's like you're up there on the mountain, and the weather just changes like nothing, you know? It's not like you can like, you know, we had the weather report, and you know, what the weather report said and what actually happened, it changes so rapidly, and it's nobody's fault. I mean, quite frankly, when you could see lightning way out there in the distance, probably we shouldn't have gone 3 miles out, but that storm moved so fast. And by the time we got back to camp, I mean, the storm had moved so fast that by the time we got back to camp, I could, like, see the lightning in the distance, but you could no longer hear thunder. That's how far away it had gotten. I mean, this was just right over us as we were going up this thing. And I just thought, man, if Vinny would have been out here, this dude, like, would have never left his house again. You would have been the most miserable human being in the entire world after that night. And we lived, and believe it or not, the next night, the weather was looking decent. And they decided that they were done going to try again. And like a complete idiot, at least I thought so at the time, I went out for night 2. And suffice to say, it was all uphill from that night. The second night was 3 miles walking in the woods. And they got all the equipment. They had the night vision. They had everything like that. And it was actually really cool. There was... Rich is like the most hardcore skeptic in the entire world. But the one thing... He does not believe in Bigfoot now. But the one thing that he said made him slightly less of a skeptic is we're walking through the woods. And we're all being quiet. And we'd do a howl. And then we'd listen and we'd hear nothing. We're walking through the woods. And at some point, just for the hell of it, somebody took their night vision goggles and they looked out into a field, and there were 20 elk. We had not heard these elk. We had absolutely no idea that there were elk in the area. There were 20 of them. So silent in this field that the only reason that we discovered them was because someone just happened to scan the field with night vision goggles. And that's when Rich was like, if some beast is out there and doesn't want to be found, he doesn't believe in Bigfoot, but he's like, that was interesting that these animals were out here, these giant, a huge herd of these giant animals, just like completely invisible to human beings out there in these woods. And that night was interesting because like everybody was seeing stuff. Like my buddy George swore to God he saw eye shine. It had to be 8 feet tall, crossed the road, and then it looked like it went up a tree. He swore to God that he saw this thing here.
Yeah, it probably was like an opossum.
Well, we actually figured it was an owl.
Sure.
But, he saw some eye shine, and other people saw eye shine, and some people claim they saw red eye shine, which is usually not an owl, unless it's an owl from hell. But people heard noises in the woods and everything like that. But, I mean, I don't know. To me, it was just... The one thing I learned is, and you can confirm this with Rich. I'm not just saying this. You can confirm this with Richard. I did totally fine in the woods. Like, for the people that thought that I was going to go out there and die, I was fine. And if anything, if I were out in the woods, like, all by myself, I would be a little worried, to say the least. But if you've got an entire group of people right there, you're not going to be attacked by a cougar. You're not going to be attacked by a bear, especially when half the people there have bear spray. I was like walking through these woods in like complete pitch darkness, and like it was fun, I'd never been out in the woods in complete darkness before, but I had a great time. I was not worried. I was not scared. I was not panicked that some animal was going to attack me. It was actually pretty awesome, and I would love to do it again, but there were definitely people there that out there in the dark, they were seeing and hearing some weird things. But I saw no Bigfoot. I saw no evidence of Bigfoot. Although I did find one. I do have to tell this story. We're back at the camp. I can't remember what day it was. It was during the day. And everyone has walkie-talkies. And we hear, this is Bob. Is anyone at base camp? And so we answered back, and he goes, I'm out here, and I'm trying to be quiet, but can someone come out here? Because there's activity. So we're like, oh, this sounds good. So me and Rich and George start heading out there, and there's a guy that works in production on the actual Finding Bigfoot TV show, and he's going out with us, and he's got a camera. And we get out there, and we meet up with the guy, and he's explaining a story. And the story is compelling enough that the guy from Finding Bigfoot turns to me and explains that he has somewhere else that he needs to be, and he gives me the camera, and he just gets out of there. So he took this report very seriously. But anyway, this guy is explaining that he's heard voices in the woods. Now, keep in mind, this is about 100 yards behind the actual camp. It's not 3 miles down the road. It's 100 yards back. It's pretty thick foliage and everything, but 100 yards behind the camp. He's heard voices, and he's also heard thumps. So Rich and I are looking at each other, and we're like, well, car doors are slamming, and there's an echo back here, and there's also people talking at camp. So I'm not sure why you've concluded that there are talking apes back here, but hey, we'll go take a look. So he tells us that we're going to split into 3 groups. He goes with one guy, George goes with somebody, and Rich and I go together. So Rich and I are just messing around back there, having a good old time, and I look down, Vinny, and I swear to God, there is what appears to be a Sasquatch footprint. Now, when you see something that looks like a Sasquatch footprint when you're out looking for Sasquatch, your mind obviously makes this look more like a footprint than it really appears, So that and the fact that it's one footprint. We saw elk footprints everywhere, but there's a series of them because the elks are moving, you see.
Yes.
So unless this Bigfoot dropped out of a UFO and landed on one foot and then was taken back up again, I'm not sure why we'd find just one footprint. But I'm looking at this footprint, and I'm filming it with this Finding Bigfoot guy's camera, and Rich and I are talking about it, and I'm like, God damn, that looks like a big toe, and that's a heel, and Jesus Christ, that looks like a Bigfoot print. So I take some photos of it and everything like that, like a, scientist. And we're out there, and Rich is walking around. I'm like, Rich, watch out for the footprint, because he's kind of bumbling about, because he's tall, like Lurch and everything like that. And at one point, I don't know what happened. Like, we decided to run up the hill, or something happened, and we had to go up to the top of the hill or whatever. And of all the square footage on the entire Earth, and there's a lot of it, Rich's big fucking foot steps right smack dab in the middle of this footprint, absolutely destroying my evidence altogether. Luckily, I filmed this. So I'm hoping that potentially on a future episode of Finding Bigfoot, they'll have a bloopers outtake, and there will be Big Rich stepping right in the middle of an 18-inch footprint. But we're out there, and we lose radio contact with everybody, and sure enough, we hear the thumps. It's the car doors. And we hear a little bit of chatter, and it's George way the hell over there, but he just can't hear us on his walkie-talkie. So that, unfortunately, was the only evidence of Bigfoot that I found on the entire trip.
And Rich killed it.
And Rich destroyed it with his own incompetence. I did see 2 deer. One just waltzed right through our camp, and the other, as we were driving back, kind of just bounded off. But that's it. The night sky out in the wilderness is absolutely awesome.
This I'm envious of.
Dude, I saw the Milky Way. Like, I know some of you listening to this live out in the boondocks, and you probably see the Milky Way every night. But us city folk, I'm lucky if I can see, like, Orion or the Big Dipper. But I was out here in the middle of nowhere, and I saw the Milky Way. It was so awesome. And shooting stars and satellites, all that stuff.
Yeah, see, when I figured if we talked about this in the show or not, but my girlfriend was surprised that I didn't want to go, and I told her, this sounds like a good hike spoiled. Like, if you took all the Bigfoot part out of this sounds like a lot of fun. But yes, I would love the idea
Dude, the Bigfoot stuff, you don't understand, Vinny. Aside from the lightning storm, there was nothing that you had to do.
That was okay, well, there you go.
Like, we woke up on whatever morning it was, Friday morning, and we all went for a nice long hike. And, we looked around, and I made Rich do some howls, which is awesome, because he looks like a squatch. He did some howls, and we listened to nothing. But we had a great hike, and we saw deer, and we went back, and George is a heavier set fella. So, like, when Rich and I went to Walmart, it's like, I bought some bars, I bought some jerky, I bought some canned soup, I bought shit you didn't have to cook. I was just going to eat what I needed to eat. I don't eat a lot. I don't need to eat a lot. I would have survived just fine for 3 days on the stuff that I bought, non-perishable foods at Walmart. George shows up with a giant grill, propane canisters. He got bacon. He got eggs. He got seasoned burgers. He got turkey. He got bread. We ate like kings. And Rich and I are like, this has become a glamping trip right here. We were out here ready to rough it, and here's George, who, he was like going to be the biggest, camper of them all. He's out here with his grill. He's cooking his food. But we ate like kings, and we had our tent, and we slept out under the stars, and it was warm, and it was great. That was the best 3 days, Vinny. It was absolutely awesome. Yes, I would like to send a special shout out to my wife, Whitney, for arranging this whole thing. Best birthday present I ever had, except for the near-death experience. But even that's something that, like, someday I could tell my kids, don't go in the woods, kids, because you're going to die. That's what almost happened to me one day. But I had a great time. The nighttime hikes, Vinny, I can't even tell you how awesome these were. To be out there in the middle of the woods, we were like 50 miles up in the mountains. Like, you go off I-5 at Cougar. That's the exit. Woodland, Cougar.
Ah, yes.
Got off at Cougar and 50 miles up into the mountains, half of which were on forest service roads.
I am familiar with those.
Oh, yeah. So we're way out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, man, we are out. There's nothing around here but wildlife. You know, it wasn't like other campers or hikers were waltzing through. We were out in the middle of nowhere and walking through the woods in the middle of the night, absolute pitch darkness, and it was so great. That was one of the best times. So I had a great time, and they got, when it was over, I mean, they invited us into the fold. They were like, we got expeditions about 3 a year, and probably not anymore this year, but 2013, we're starting to set stuff up. So I would strongly suspect that once a year, George, Rich, and I are going to go find some Bigfoot. And hopefully we'll have a better luck next time than we do this time. There was a guy, I should add. Although I saw no evidence of Bigfoot, there was a guy who believes that Bigfoot peed on his tent.
All right.
Yeah.
What? I guess I was going to ask what's his evidence of this, but he may have disgusting evidence.
Well, no. I mean, it was a stream from high up. Mm-hmm. So that's what he saw.
Did he sample this?
There was the guy.
Substance?
No, he didn't. There was a guy that heard the chatter in the woods. There was a guy who discovered actually a series of prints up at one of the lakes in the area. He went hiking, and they went up there, and they found like a dozen prints. So that guy found something. I think there was a guy who... I can't remember what else. Those were the main sightings. But no one actually saw the creature. No one captured it on any of the trail cams. Nobody
threw a big net over it.
Nobody threw a big net over it. It was not a very squatchy weekend, really. But the guy, there was an old guy who was in charge of the whole deal. And it was kind of funny when you looked around the camp. It was like half of the guys there, it was just, you knew that they were kids in the 60s when the Bigfoot craze hit. And they've been following it ever since. I mean, they looked straight out of the 70s. The hair was a little long, big-ass mustache. And, I mean, you just look at these people and you're like, these people are children of the 60s and 70s. And they're still there right now. But one of the guys was an old guy. And he's explaining that, he's on the last day. He's like, we've had 2 quiet days. But usually when this happens, one of 2 things occurs on the last night. He goes, either they have scoped us out and they're bored and they go away, and the third night is very, very quiet, or they determine that we are not a threat and that we are rather goofy and interesting, and they come out to play, so to speak, and there's a lot of activity. And as it turns out, there was no activity. Make of that what you will. But he said, I've been doing this a long time, and if you keep coming to these things, at some point, there's going to be a night of great activity. Perhaps you'll get a lot of responses to your calls. Perhaps you'll have things happening outside your tent. Perhaps you'll do whatever. And he goes, one night like that will last you 20 years of searching. And didn't happen, but maybe next year I'll go out and I'll have a night of activity that'll get me going out there until I'm 70 years old with a big, thick mustache and a plaid shirt and my blue jeans tucked into my boots. But it was not to be this time, but I don't care. I had a great time.
Well, happy birthday.
That's right. So one of these days, everybody will get Rich and George on the show. They'll tell some stories, and if you have any questions for me, you're welcome to ask them. Maybe when Carl Stern is on again, we'll talk more about this trip. But in conclusion, I had an awesome time. I want to thank everybody, Mike Sempervive in particular, for holding down the fort when I was gone. For those of you that enjoyed that, suffice to say, it will not be the last time. So that's great. He's an awesome guy. And thanks, everybody, for not freaking out. I know that the board has had a tendency in the past to go nuts if I don't put a show up, but nobody did that. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm glad it happened. And, I'm back, and life is good, and that's my story. So,
speaking of the board real quick, we talked about this in the show many times. I thought we made it abundantly clear I did not go. Did you think there's mystery or ambiguity about my presence or absence on this trip?
Do I think there was?
Yeah. I forget what I was even talking about, but I started tweeting on Friday night. I got flooded with responses. Why aren't you in the woods? So you listen to me enough to follow me on Twitter, but you don't listen to me enough to say, I'm not fucking going.
You never revealed on the show you weren't going.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. You revealed this in email, and I just completely dropped the subject after that.
All right. Well, there you go.
Well, next year, Vinny, I think you should go.
Well, Brian, right now I'm thinking about it.
Dude, I'm telling you, if it were not for the lightning storm, I'm glad you didn't go because of the near death with the lightning.
I do not deal well with hard times.
But had it not been for that, I would have just been, I don't even know. I would have been heckling you unmercifully for missing like the best time of your life. It was great. So next year you should think about going. And hey, George is a hell of a cook.
That helps.
That's right. All right, everybody, we're going to wrap it up for today, but we're going to be back tomorrow with more. Got a lot of shows lined up. New Observer, New Figure 4, all that kind of good stuff. So check it out. And that is it from here. We'll talk to you again after a while.
Adios.